Good afternoon, student. Myself, Sanat Kumar Swai, and will be taking a class on the behavioristic framework in organizational behavior. So, in the previous classes, we have discussed about the organizational structure, organizational behavior, the various kinds of concepts in organizational behavior. So today we'll be discussing about the behavioristic framework. There are multiple frameworks in organizational structure. So today we'll be discussing about the behavioristic framework in organizational behavior. Okay, so how the behavioral framework is important in any organizational setting. Okay. So introduction. So what do you mean by behavioristic framework? Behavioristic framework in organizational behavior is a theoretical approach. Okay, is a theoretical approach which focuses on understanding and explaining the human behavior. Obviously, when we are studying about the organizational behavior, it is the human behavior, of course. Okay, so how we are understanding and how we are explaining the human behavior within the context of the organization, so that is known as the behavioristic framework. Okay, so it is how this behavior came into play. Okay, what do you mean by behaviorism? Behaviorism is a psychological theory. The psychological theory which emerged in the 20th century. Okay, so there are two types of behavior. There are two types of behavior. One is the observable behavior. Okay, the behavior which we are able to observe of any kind of individual. Okay, and what kind of environmental factors that influence them. Okay. There are various kinds of environmental factors. There are various kinds of other factors that also influence our observable behavior. So, if the organizational behavior practitioners, while they are studying and on employees' behavioral attitude, so they have to see that what kind of external behavior, what kind of environmental factors which is influencing that particular employee, which is why he or she is having certain kind of behavioral attitude. Okay. So that is known as behaviorism, which is a psychological theory which has been emerged in the earlier 20th century. Okay. So this is a framework. Okay. The behavioral framework, when a organization behave in a particular organization, why that person, why that employee is behaving in a certain way, and how his or her behavior is being shaped by various kinds of external stimuli, and how it has been reinforcement mechanisms come into play. So we are going to study about that. Okay. So there are few key principles and concepts related to this behavioral framework, so which we are going to discuss. Okay. Now, observable behavior. What do you mean by observable behavior? Behaviorist, the people who study behavior, human behavior, and they are known as behaviorists. Okay. They believe that observable behavior should be studied and analyzed. Definitely, that should be studied and analyzed. Okay, but thing is that while studying the observable behavior, the internal mental processes and emotions are unable to be considered. The behaviorist, they are not able to see what internal mental processes are going on within the brain, within the mind of an individual, and it is not considered as a relevant factor while understanding the organizational behavior. Rather, the researcher or the behaviorist, they are focusing on the actions. What kind of actions has been produced by the employee, or what kind of reaction is being produced by the employee, and what kind of interactions which has been taken place, due to which certain behavioral changes has been made. Okay, so in that case, one of the most important factor has been not taken into consideration. Okay, that is very important, that while studying the observable behavior of a particular individual, his or her internal mental process should also be studied. Well, that is very difficult. So that is very difficult and very challenging to understand the internal mental processes of any kind of individual. But certainly, if we try, if the behaviorists they put some sort of effort into it, then definitely they can understand that what kind of mental processes a person is been going through, and what are the factors which is influencing a person internal processes. Okay, so the first one is observable behavior. Okay, second, stimulus response relationship. Okay, what do you mean by stimulus? Stimulus is a biological term. Okay. Stimulus is a biological term, but in organizational behavior, it is a stimulus response means. For example, I'll give you an example. Let's say while there is, let's say there's a mosquito on the mosquito bites on your hand, okay, or on your face, okay, on your cheek. Automatically, there's a response. There's a stimulus. The stimulus which goes into our brain, and it creates a response that we have to hit that mosquito. Okay, so that is stimulus response. Okay, if something happens, there is a response. Okay, so similarly there is a relationship between the stimuli, which is the external factor, and response, which is the observable behavior. Okay, so the observable behavior, is it directly proportional to the external factors or the stimuli? Okay, whatever the stimuli is, there is a stimuli, there has the response uh, is being done in the similar way. Okay, so the behaviorist, while they are studying about the stimulus response relationship, they argue that in various kinds of organization, okay, the people, okay, in various kinds of organization, they respond to various kinds of stimuli in their environment or in their workplace. Okay, now what are the stimuli? Stimulus are like any kind of reward. If there is a reward, if there is an appraisal, okay, if there is a punishment, okay, if there's a very good feedback which has been given to the employee, okay, for his or her good work, okay, and social cues. What do you mean by social cues? Social cues means like any kind of verbal or non-verbal signals. Okay, any kind of when we pass some good remarks. Okay, it may be through voice, it may be through your facial expression, body expressions. Okay, these are all cues. Okay, so these are the external stimuli. Okay, when a person faces this kind of stimuli within the workplace, his or her response towards the stimuli changes. Okay, and that is known as observable behavior. So if a behaviorist or organizational behavior practitioner, if they are observing this kind of observable behavior of a particular employee, then they have to check the stimuli, what kind of stimuli has been provided to them, and how they are responding, what kind of responses are coming from the employee, or what kind of behavior they are showing. Okay, so that is observable. Okay, now reinforcement. What do you mean by reinforcement? When we make our house, we reinforce it with cement. Okay, so to make it strong. Okay. Reinforcement means to make something strong, to reinforce it. Okay, but in case of organizational behavior, it is a central concept, okay, in behaviorism, that what kind of the uses of various rewards and punishment to shape or to modify certain behavior. Okay, in any organizational context, reinforcement can take the forms of various kinds of incentives, various kinds of recognitions. Okay, if there is a promotion or any kinds of appraisal for a particular employee, that influences the employee's behavior. So that also reinforces. Okay, that also reinforces the behavioral attitude of the particular employee. So this is one of the central concepts, very important concept in the behaviorism. Okay. Conditioning. Okay. What do you mean by conditioning? We have been conditioned. Okay. Everybody of us are being conditioned by various kinds of factors. While we are working in a particular organization, while we are living in the society, we have been conditioned. We have been conditioned to think in a particular way. If we are if we are thinking in a particular way, then we are already conditioned to think in that particular way. Okay. But in case of organizational behavior setting, we'll see that behaviorists believe that the behavior can be learned and modified if there is certain chances of modification, okay, through the process of conditioning. If we can condition a person, then there is a chances that the person can change, or that person's behavior can be changed. Okay, if we are using certain kind of conditioning processes. Okay. So there are two types of conditioning. Now the first one is classical conditioning. Okay, and the second one is operant conditioning. What do you mean by classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is which is related to stimulus within a response. Okay, if there is a stimulus, then there is a response. Okay, the mosquito story. Yeah. So if the mosquito bites, then there is a response and you hit the mosquito. So there is a immediate response to that external stimuli. And operant conditioning, it is reinforcing or punishing behavior to increase or decrease their frequency. Okay. While we are whether we are reinforcing or whether we are punishing a particular employee, so that can increase, or punishing behaviors, so that can increase or decrease their frequency. Okay, so there are two types of conditioning. Now we'll see for certain slides. This is a very interesting slide. If you see, this is Pavlov. Okay, Pavlov dog experiment. Okay, Pavlov has done a dog experiment on classical conditioning. Okay, so in the first one, if you see, okay, this one is the unconditional stimulus. Okay, there's a dog. Okay, sorry. So this is a dog, and this is unconditional stimulus. Okay, and this is unconditional response. Okay, unconditional stimulus and unconditional response. Okay. In the second one, you see there is a food plus bell during conditioning. This is before conditioning. Okay, so there is before conditioning unconditional stimulus with food, and there is unconditional response. Okay, and if we are just putting a bell, we are just belling it. Okay, so there is a neutral stimulus, so there is no response from the dog. During conditioning, this is before conditioning and this is during conditioning. During conditioning, if you see, there's a food and there's a bell. So while we are ringing the bell, okay, still there is unconditional conditioned response. Okay, after conditioning, this is during conditioning, this is before conditioning, this is during conditioning, and this is after conditioning. So after conditioning, while we are ringing the bell, there is a conditioned response. Okay, there is a salivary, condition of the dog. Okay, so this is the classical condition. This is Pavlov's dog experiment. Okay, now what do you mean by operant conditioning? Operant conditioning means this is a story of a rat. You see, so specific consequences are associated with a voluntary behavior. Like, let's say if rewards are introduced to increase a behavior. Okay, and punishment is introduced to decrease a behavior. Okay, in any kind of organizational setting, if we are using various kinds of rewards, okay, to increase the behavioral attitude of an employee, or we are using punishment sort of conditioning to decrease certain behavior of a behavioral attitude of a employee. Okay, so this is known as operant conditioning. Now, behavior modification. Okay. Can the behavior be modified? How? If yes, then how that can be modified? what are the procedures, what are the processes through which the behavior modification can be done. Okay. So in the behavioristic framework, it involves the applications of behavior modifications techniques. Various kinds of techniques are being used in the behavior modifications in various kinds of various organizations. Okay. This includes designing incentive systems, setting clear performance goals. So various kinds of incentive systems are being kept into place, okay, to motivate the employee. Okay, certain goals, clear goals, performance goals are being placed, okay, so that they can progress, they can have a clear idea of what is their performance goals and how to achieve them. Next, providing feedback. Okay, various kinds of feedbacks are being provided to that particular employee. Okay, and using other strategies, various kinds of other strategies are also been taken into consideration to encourage desired behavior and discourage certain undesired ones. Okay. So this is important about the behavior modification, how a behavior modification can be done on a particular employee. Now, environmental determinism. What do you mean by environmental determinism? The behaviorist, okay, they are very much interested to understand that the behavior of a particular person is being governed by the external factors, external environments, rather than the internal environments or internal factors. Okay, the external environment play a very important role in shaping the behavior of a particular employee or a particular um, person. Okay, so what do they say? They say that by arguing, by manipulating, sorry, they argue that by manipulating the environment, if we are able to manipulate the environmental factors, okay, how we can manipulate the environmental factors? Okay, there are various ways of achieving the manipulating the environmental factors, such as by providing incentives, okay, by providing various kinds of feedbacks, positive feedback, okay, by giving good appraisals, okay, positive appraisal to the employee. Okay, the organizations can influence and control the employee's behavior to achieve certain goals. See, I believe that conditioning is very important. When you are joining the army, once an army, always an army person. Okay, they can never be a civilian. They've been conditioned. An army personnel, they are conditioned to think in a. Similarly, it goes with a police officer also. Once you become a police officer, you have been conditioned to think like a police officer all the way. Okay? You can never become a civilian. Similarly, they've been trained, they have been conditioned in the way, okay, the desired, so that the desired goals can be achieved by the organization. Similarly, the behaviorist or the organizational behavior practitioners or the managers, they also, if they want a certain specific goals which need to be achieved, they have to control the employees' behavior, whether that is positive, that is negative, whether they want certain motivational behaviors to be achieved. So various kinds of um, environmental factors need to be manipulated so that they can control the employees' behavior to achieve certain specific goals. Empirical research. Empirical research is something which is related to social studies, social sciences. Okay. While we are doing any kind of research, okay, social research, then empirical research comes into play. Okay, here in social organizational behavior, this also plays a very important role. Okay, why? Because what do you mean by empirical research? Empirical research is something, any research can be termed as an empirical research, which is based on a verifiable evidence. If we have got certain evidence, if we can put facts and figures on our research, then that becomes a empirical research. Okay. So the behaviorism plays a very strong emphasis, very strong importance on empirical research. If you are into any kind of research to study the employee's behavior, so empirical research plays a very important role, because that it has to be from a verifiable evidence. The evidence should be verifiable. It's not like we are not unable to verify the evidence and then we are doing a certain kind of research. It's not so. The evidence which we are placing for the research, that has to be verifiable. Okay. The next, the researchers also use the data and observation to test the hypothesis. Now, what is hypothesis? What do you mean by hypothesis? This is also something related to the research methodology while undertaking a social research, okay, or any kind of survey work. So let's say we are into a research, we are into any kind of social research. We are going to undertake any kind of research work. So before doing the research work, we have to have possible explanation, okay, proper explanation for something which has not yet been found. Okay, let's say if we are doing a particular research, we think about that the outcome may be this, the outcome may be that, okay, that the hypothesis may be true, may not be true, okay. Most of the cases, that is the presumption, we assume, okay, that during the course of our research, the hypothesis may be this, the result may be this, okay. So this is a what this is a possible explanation, a presumption, assumption, you can say, okay, that may or may not be true. So while doing the empirical research on a organizational behavior of an organization, certain hypothesis has to be tested to use the data and observation. By taking the data and observation, certain hypothesis has to be made before an organizational behavior is validated. The theories, before validating the theories of an organizational behavior, various data and observation has to be taken into consideration to test the hypothesis of the organizational behavior. Now, criticism. Definitely, there is some sort of criticism in this. Okay, so there are critics on this particular framework. Okay, so what do they say? Okay, what do they say? They say that it oversimplifies the human behavior while understanding the human behavior. Okay, the behavioral framework into consideration. The behaviorists, they ignore the internal cognitive processes, okay, the mental processes, the mental what operations which take internally, and various kinds of emotions. See, there are certain various kinds of emotions which is continuously been going on in our brain, okay, in our internal internal body. So we behave in those kind of emotions, okay? Like if we are sad, okay, our behavior will be changed. If we are happy, our behavior may change, okay? So there are various kinds of emotions which is happening in our body, and by ignoring those internal cognitive processes, we cannot come to a certain point of behavioral framework. We cannot say that this particular behavioral framework is the only framework which is true, because we have to see the internal cognitive processes also. Our emotions also play a very important role while studying the behavioral framework. Okay. They also say, the critics, they also say that this is some sort of like a mechanistic way, okay, not a humanistic way. And this is not a humanistic way. This is rather a mechanistic way of controlling the various approaches to manage the employees. And I would believe that there should be some sort of like mechanistic and um, um, humanistic way of controlling the approaches, various kinds of approaches, rather than only mechanistic or rather than only humanistic. Okay, there has to be a mixture. There has to be a blend of both the humanistic and mechanistic way of managing the employees. Okay. While coming to the summary, we'll see that behavioristic framework gives a very important and valuable insight in the field of organizational behavior. Okay, but it is one of the various theoretical framework. Okay, it's not a particular perspective. It has many perspective. It has got many theoretical perspective, and behavioristic framework is one of them. Okay, which has also contributed valuable insight to the field of organizational behavior. Okay. And when you see that while uh, various kinds of approaches, while studying the various kinds of approaches in the organizational behavior, it is also important that the behavioristic or the organizational behavior practitioner, they also consider the cognitive, the emotional, and other factors in understanding an employee's behavior within an organization, rather than ignoring those factors. If that can be taken into consideration, then a concrete idea can be taken, a concrete understanding can be undertaken, okay, of a particular particular employee, okay, to study the particular employee's behavior. Okay. So with this, we have completed the behavioristic framework in any organizational behavior. Okay. Thank you very much for your time and patience. Thank you very much.